Hello everyone and welcome to my talk. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I still remember last year during this event by Dons, we were with two representatives of open science communities who had a small stand at the event, and now we're here on the main stage. So we're moving up in the world, which is really nice, and a lot has happened in the last year regarding open science communities. So I'm really happy to share my ideas and insights on that with you. So the title of this talk is The Importance of Open Science Communities in the Transition to Open Science. My name is Loek Brinkman. I'm an assistant professor at the Utrecht Medical Center. I do research on open science. I develop teaching materials for open science, and I am the coordinator of the open science community in Utrecht. So, drop your fair data. That's a nice theme for today. It's not only a theme, it's also a message and a call to action to researchers to make their data fair and open. But are they listening? So if we look at who is attending this event today, there were over 200 people who registered for the event, and about 25 to 30% of them are researchers. So that's nice. We have researchers here today, but of course we're still missing out on a lot of researchers. And that is a problem because we want to have a change in culture in academia where all researchers make their data and open and fair. So how do we reach them? How do we make this culture change happen? So I took this picture from a blog post by Brian Nosek where he describes how you can instantiate a culture change. And you see that all these layers of this pyramid have to work together. So on the top layer we have policy, and a lot is already happening at the level of policy, both nationally as internationally. I think most of you are familiar with, for example, the Coalition S, Coalition of Research International Coalition of Research Funders demanding open science, open access publications for all research that is funded by these funders. But also we have a national open science plan, and we have local open science programs, for example in Utrecht and in Delft. And if we go one layer below, incentives and rewards, also a lot is happening there in the Netherlands. We have the position paper by the VSNU, Room for Everybody's Talents, and that is now also being followed up locally. Recently there was also a statement by Utrecht University saying, well, the time of talking is over and now is the time to really put this to practice. So that is really nice. As I said, research funders play a very important role. It's also it's very nice that also we have Maria Cruz today here from NWO to give their perspective on open science and fair data. So on the bottom layer, there's infrastructure. So the tools that make it possible to make your data open and fair. Also there we already have a lot in place. We have DANS, of course. We have Dataverse NL, also represented here today. We have the European Open Science Cloud. We have the Open Science Framework, Zenodo, Figshare, all platforms to share data and other materials. So that's why I think that the main challenge is now, at this moment, in the middle. So at the level of communities. So this level is about behavior and attitudes. So the way we do our research, and this entails the research community by and large. And so that's why I say the challenges, as I see it, are not so much about the rules or the tools. It's really about a social challenge, how to reach the research community by and large, and how to inspire them and engage them to make open science and fair data part of their daily workflows. One of the things to make that happen is by sharing stories, by exchanging ideas on what is already happening. So what are people already doing? And these people can maybe set an example for the rest of the research community. And that's also what we see today here. When we look at the program, you see many examples of how these practices can, how open and fair data can be put to practice. Another example of this is this really nice open science use case collections, which is a collection of 9 award-winning open science practices, and many of these practices also pertain to fair data, which can be found at bit.ly/OS use cases. It's on Zenodo, but this is a short link to get to this collection. So this sharing of experience amongst researchers is also at the core of these open science communities, which I'm coordinating, one of which I'm coordinating in Utrecht. And the key feature of the open science communities, at least the format that we are now promoting, is that we focus on newcomers to open science. So the key target audience are people that are open to open science, they're interested in open science, but maybe they don't have any experience with it per se. And we want to bring them in contact with peers, colleagues, who already have experience in open science. So we do this, for example, by members of the of open science communities. They get a profile on the website of the respective community, and there they indicate what they want to learn regarding open science, and also what kind of expertise they already have and which they can be contacted for. We also organize workshops, symposia, and since the corona outbreak, we also have online open science coffee hours. We have a newsletter, blogs, podcasts, all means to stimulate interactions within the community. So that's the key goal of the open science community, to stimulate this knowledge exchange amongst peers, and in particular between newcomers and more experienced peers. But an open science community is also a place where members of the community can interact with institutional stakeholders, for example, on policy or infrastructure or support services. So this is basically the middle layer of the pyramid that I described in one slide before, where they can interact with the top layer and with the bottom layer. And by the same token, an open science community is also a place where academia and society can meet, interact, and co-create. For example, in projects on public engagement, but also in collaborating with societal stakeholders such as policy, politics, ministries, companies, patients, and citizens. So, in 2018, Anita Eerland and we started in Utrecht the first open science community in the Netherlands. At least an open science community in this format that we promote. And since then, we have about 300 members from all faculties and all career stages. So we're really happy with this really diverse set of members, and most of them are researchers. In 2020, we made a big step. We expanded our core team with 7 faculty ambassadors and 1 student assistant. So we have in each faculty, we have an ambassador who is our ears and eyes in that faculty, who's promoting or making sure that people within this faculty know about the existence of our community, and also to listen what are the opportunities and obstacles that researchers encounter, which are specific to that faculty. And by the same token, we also learn from each other. So what can different faculties learn from each other in terms of open science practices? These faculty ambassadors are now also becoming part of advisory boards, open science advisory boards, who advise the dean on how to implement open science policies at this particular faculty. So again, this integration of this middle layer of the pyramid, in this case with the top layer. We're supported by the Open Science Program Utrecht, the Utrecht Open Science Program. So now we are with 10 people in our core team, and together we have a total of 1.8 FTE. So this shows that Utrecht University is really believes in this and also invests in this. And we are very, very happy with that. So I think one of our big achievements is that we have also been able to inspire colleagues at other universities to start similar open science communities. So you see that almost all universities in the Netherlands now have a Opensized community, and we're also expanding internationally. So we have an Opensized community in Ireland and one in Sweden. And together we form this international network of open science and scholarship communities. And we have big plans for the coming years. We really want to also inspire people all around the globe to start open science communities in different countries. And for this we made a starter kit, an open science community starter kit. We are finally finalizing the document at this moment, but if you can already have a sneak peek at the document at bit.ly/OSC starter kit. And it describes 4 stages of starting and fostering an open science community. And we give practical advice on all these different steps. So when we listen to the people within our different communities, what do we hear regarding challenges for open and fair data? I don't want to go into a lengthy discussion about each and every of these points, but just want to highlight what kind of input do we get from our community. What we often hear is it costs just too much time. My time is limited and it's not worth the effort. People are not recognized and rewarded yet enough to really put in the effort to make their data open. And what you hear here is first of all it's sometimes just a reluctance to change. Why should I invest in something new? What I'm doing now is actually working out fine. But what you also hear is that a lot of these problems relate to interoperability. So how do I make sure that other people can actually use and reuse this data? And sometimes this relates to what kind of software you use. Should you only use open source software? And sometimes it is as simple as, okay, for me it's a huge barrier to translate all my comments into, for example, English, to make it actually understandable for other people. Another thing that we often hear is the tension between open science and collaborating with industry. So what if I want to do a project together with a commercial company and they don't want their data to become open? It's a struggle. Something that we hear very often is that working in an open way creates exposure. And this exposure can be very frightening. For example, in particular when you work in an unsafe environment. So when you're making your data available, then everybody can see what you're doing. And if people think that you made a mistake, then, well, you can be called out on that. And that's, of course, that is what science should be, right? We should be able to criticize each other's work and improve each other's work. But if this goes in a way that is really personal, and is really that it is really frowned upon to make mistakes, yeah, then you create a very unhealthy atmosphere where people are really afraid to share the data. And even I heard from one person that said, "I'm afraid to incur the wrath of the open science community." And here he means not the open science community Utrecht but more the open science community by and large. And I think he has a point there, in such that sometimes the people that are really into open science can sometimes be a bit harsh on people who are not practicing open science yet, or that make mistakes. And I think that by being so critical of one another, it's really not really helping the uptake of open science practices. So I think we should respect each other's workflows and also respect that we all are just human and mistakes are part of our work. GDPR is also something that we hear often. So people are afraid that they might break the law when they make their data open, or they say, well, it's just so much hassle. There's so much rules, I don't understand it anymore. So, well, I'm just gonna stop doing it. So these are just a few points that we hear within our community. regarding obstacles of open data. So the take-home messages of this talk are, first of all, get in touch with your local open science community. If there is no open science community at your university, start one today. Starter kit that I mentioned earlier might be a nice starting point. Get in touch with us. We will help you out on getting your open science community in place. Also very important, support your local open science community. So in particular, a community thrives on the contributions of its members. And what's also important here to note is that a lot of these communities are still working, the people that are coordinating these communities are still doing this on a voluntary basis. That's also how we started out, but luckily now we are supported by the UU Open Science program, but many of my colleagues are not. So, sorry for that. What I wanted to say here is that that many of my colleagues who are still doing this on a voluntary basis, this is really not a sustainable way of running an open science community. So if you have, if you believe in an open science community, you should also invest in it. Then it's really important to involve researchers in shaping and refining policy, infrastructure, and support. And I think that the open science communities can play a critical role in this. In particular, in hearing the voice from people from outside the, so to say, open science bubble. It's of course really important to hear from people that are already committed to open science, who are already doing open science, but it's also really important to listen to the people who are new to open science, because they can have particular other insights regarding what are the obstacles they encounter for making their workflows more open. So I want to conclude with this. We have a lot of momentum going on in making open science and fair data the new norm in academia. We see a lot is happening already at the top layers on policy and incentives. We have a lot of infrastructure already in place. So now I think the main challenge is to activate the research community by and large to change their ways and make open science a norm. And open science communities can play a critical role in that. And I hope that in a couple of years, we'll just say open science and fair data, yeah, that's just how we do things. So I want to thank my team. I have a great team of open science ambassadors, and I want to thank all the other open science communities, in particular those working on a voluntary basis. The UU Open Science program for supporting us and believing in us. Geralda for the infographics, Eva for the photos, Dans for the invitation, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Luke, for this really nice presentation. So I have you with me now here so we can answer some questions. I see that there was already quite some discussions in the chat, and you also provided some additional information, so that's really nice. If people are interested in the starter kit, have a look at the chat, there's the link. And just one thing I wanted to mention is you mentioned Maria Cruz from NWO, who was indeed supposed to give a presentation today, but unfortunately she could not join us, so she will not be presenting today. So that was just something I wanted to note in case people noticed the change in the program. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. Please, if anybody has questions, put them in the chat. One of the things that came up was this question about how you said at the beginning, how many researchers signed up for this event. And, you know, researchers are the ones that we, of course, need to reach with our open science advocacy. And the question was whether maybe researchers would focus more on open science specifically for their own discipline or their own specific field. And it would be nice to hear your experience with this or your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very valid point, of course, and I think it's actually one of the reasons that we started this an open science community in Utrecht, because Anita and I. Anita, my co-founder at OSCU, we were already attending a lot of open science events like we have today, and there we always met the same people, or at least the same kind of people. the people that are already committed to open science and already have, for whom open science is already high priority. And we thought, no, we have to reach beyond this bubble of open science enthusiasts, and also reach out to people who are new to open science, but for whom open science is way less of a priority than these open science enthusiasts. So yeah, our format of open science communities is also really an attempt to make the open science knowledge as low threshold as possible. I think that in that sense it plays a very important role to not only have events like we have here today, but also have local events, or for example, what we have on our website, that people just have a list of people who they can contact within their department, and just knock on their door. Well, not knock on their door now, but that was supposed to be the plan. At least to have a really low threshold way of reaching out to people and learning more about open science.
Because is your idea that maybe they don't know where to go, and if they would know, then they would do it? Or do you think that the majority of people who are not already sort of advocates maybe need just more sort of stringent measures, so we need to force them? Or do you think people would, if they had more resources or more easier access to information, they would then also join the movement?
I really believe in this interaction of top-down and bottom-up approaches. So in that sense, and of course, at some point in time, we need to institutionalize open science policies and just say, okay, this is how we are going to do things, but we're not there yet. And I think in particular in this phase where we're just fleshing out how we as a research community want to embrace open science practices, is really important to have this input from researchers who are just getting started with open science, how they would like that to happen. So in that sense, as I said before, it is just a matter also about a threshold. I've seen that if we organize, that's pre-corona, but if we organize events in the city center, then the faculties that are in the city center would attend, but the people that on the outside would not, and vice versa. So that's a 10-minute, 15-minute bike ride, and it was already that threshold was already too high for people to attend these kind of workshops, which is not. I'm not criticizing them in any way. It's just an observation that this is already a bottleneck for people. So you really need to, in particular for the people for whom open science is not top priority, we have to make it as easy as possible. And therefore also I really like these practical workshops and practical sessions where you can learn from your peers. We often have very short presentations, 5 to 10 minutes, where researchers just say, "Hey, I shared my data and I did it like this, and these are my experiences with it."
Yeah, I think having sort of role models and good examples is definitely something that is important. So one comment or maybe question is whether one of the major issues for people is not that they think that their ideas will be stolen. I mean, you focused on a couple of obstacles people have, but I think sometimes this is one of the things people will say, like, I need to publish on my data first. You know, is this something you still experience, and what do you say to these people?
Yeah, it is a concern that we also hear. I don't have the answer to that, and I think also that from it is more, and that actually holds for most of the issues that we hear. I think we're not like an open science community is not a place where you say, okay, I have a question, and the open science community now will give me the answer and tell me what to do. It is a platform and because on a lot of these things we don't know yet what we need to do. Mm-hmm. So these open science platforms do give you a platform to interact with people that already have, for example, dealt with similar kind of problems or had some ideas about it. So it's really about a platform to discuss these kind of topics.
Yeah, and I think that's very valuable. I think it's really great what you have been setting up. There was one question on how you were funded. So maybe that's a good question to sort of close this session, and maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so when we started 2 years ago, in 2018, we did it all on a voluntary basis, Anita and I. And at some point, we contacted the Open Science program. in Utrecht, and they immediately were very enthusiastic about what we were doing, because they said that it's very complementary to the approach that we are taking in promoting the uptake of open science. So they said, and we asked for a budget, and we got that from them. So, but we work independently from the more institutional open science program. So we have our own agenda, but we work in close collaboration with them.
Okay. I think that is really nice, and hopefully this is also an inspiration for others who want to start up their communities. Let me just see if there are any more questions. I think there are some discussions in the chat, and I believe you will also be there to maybe answer more questions in the chat if people have them. So I think I would thank you very much for giving this presentation and for joining us here live to answer some questions. And then we will now move to a break before we continue with our next two keynote speakers. We will be back live again around 10 to 2.